HOWTO. My name is Andrew Hancock. I'm a VMware technical architect from Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. I have worked with VMware products since their inception in 1998, so that's 23 years I've been working with the VMware product line. Some may say that if you cut Andy in half, it reads VMware like a stick of rock from Blackpool. I've also written many articles, over 100 for Experts Exchange, and won many other awards and accolades. I'm honoured to have been accepted into the VMware Expert program for the last 11 years, and more recently a VMware vExpert Pro for the last 2. This is my first video for Experts Exchange in a series of Hancock's VMware half-hour sessions, which will support the VMware HOWTO series I've created over the years, and in part 1, hopefully of many, in this video we're going to start with how to install and configure VMware vSphere Hypervisor 7 or ESXi 7.0. In fact, we're going to install the latest and greatest 7.02 or 7.U2 or update 2. This is live and direct, unedited, so there will be some gaffes along the way and probably some bloopers. I'm not going to cut them out. This morning I struggled for about 35 minutes actually trying to download the software from VMware, so I abandoned that video. So that bit was scripted, so let's start. I'm going to put all the links that I use in the steps below, but all these links that I'm actually basically using can be found in the how to install and configure VMware vSphere Hypervisor 7 article that I've written at Experts Exchange. That article was written for 7.0. The procedure is exactly the same for 7.0 U2. Just going to spice it up a little bit. I'm going to make some changes, and I'm actually basically going to show you how we actually basically install it using out-of-band management on a Dell Poweredge. So something that maybe that you haven't seen. So we're gonna do that later. Okay, so you got the article there which you can follow. I'm going to roughly follow it if I can, although a lot of it's sort of kind of in my head and I don't necessarily need to follow the article, so do forgive me if I stray off piste a little bit. So anyway, without further ado, the first thing that we need to do really, and we need to consider before we even start going anywhere near a server, really in recommending or specifying a server, the first thing that we actually basically need to do before we even buy the server is to actually ensure that the server is compatible or certified for use with VMware vSphere or ESXi. And we can do this by looking at the VMware Compatibility Guide, as it's now sort of kind of called. I'm a bit of an old timer, so I like to call it the HCL, or the Hardware Compatibility List, or the Hardware Certified List. It's a database that VMware maintains of all the supported and certified servers. What that's supposed to mean is that the servers that are on the list should work with VMware vSphere ESXi with no issues. If you do get an issue, you can basically log a support call with either VMware or the vendor, or VMware likes to call them partners, and if it's on the list, they should basically help you find out why it's not working or resolve the issue for you. If you do not have a server that's on the list, you do run the risk that VMware is not likely to support you, the vendor partner is not likely to support you. And that's something really that you need to basically consider about putting one of these servers into production that you may not be able to get support on. So I'll get down and stop preaching about the HCL, but we see lots of issues on a week-by-week basis because organisations have decided to basically save some money, and I know money is a big deal, but unfortunately a lot of organisations are purchasing servers that are not on the HCL. All appears to work well initially, but unfortunately if things do actually start to go pear-shaped, it is very difficult to actually basically get the help of VMware or the vendor if it doesn't basically sit on the compatibility list. Many of the reasons that a server doesn't make it on the list is because its CPU is not supported, its storage controller is not supported, or its network interface is not supported. If you've got a home lab, a white box, or you're learning ESXi, vSphere, then feel free to use unsupported hardware, but obviously you're aware that you're going to have to really deal with the community to actually find out why it's not actually working properly. Okay, so moving on. I'm going to go and select the version of vSphere that I'm going to install. ESX I'm going to install. So ESXi 7.0 U2. And I'm going to scroll down this list of partner names, vendor names, and I'm going to select Dell. And I'm going to enter the keyword. Now, the server that we're using for this video, this demonstration, is a Dell Poweredge R730. So I'm just going to basically type R730 in there. I could have just hit the update and view results, but I'm going to get pages and pages and pages of Dell servers that are certified for it. And I'm going to have to wade through them all basically to work out, where's mine in the list. Okay, so we've got two hits there. As you can see, Dell Poweredge R730 and another R730. Difference between them is the CPU. And again, this is very important. The partners and VMware generally remove CPU support from their releases. And I think the processor that we're using today, is an E5 2600 V3. But this is the last version of ESXi that's likely to support that processor. 7.0 or maybe 8.0, it will be removed from support, and this will no longer be a certified server. It does not mean that ESXi is not going to work on the server. It just means that if you go to VMware support and ask them a question about your server misbehaving, they are likely to wash their hands of it and basically turn around and say to you, I'm sorry, but your server's not certified. So just bear that in mind. If you're purchasing a server, first thing you should be thinking about really is hardware compatibility list. Let's go there, let's check it out, let's see whether or not that my server is certified. Before you then basically start going off and downloading and installing software, again, refer to the HCL. Also, bear in mind as well, when you're purchasing servers as well, you can purchase them with different storage controllers, you can purchase them with different network interfaces. Everything that's certified by VMware is on the list. So please check it before you start your installation. Okay, so again, all these links are in my article, and I'm also going to put them in the steps below. Okay, so where do we go to get 7.02? Well, obviously we're going to go to VMware.com, and VMware has actually basically really spruced up its lovely website recently, and we've now got something called My Connect, but basically it's just a flash dashboard. I struggled earlier on with using Chrome, and so I've started off this demonstration and I've switched over to Firefox, and I'm hoping that VMware now have sorted out its issues, the website's working for me, and at least this time I can actually basically hopefully download the ISO. Obviously the ISO is a virtual CD-ROM image. So first thing we need to do is to log in. If you already have a login, then you can ignore this piece. This is just going to show you how to log in and how to register for an account, but I'm going to go through the basis here to show you. Okay, that website's looking a lot faster than it was before. Okay, so I'm going to basically register, and it needs an email address. Now I've been basically creating so many Google temporary email addresses that it would appear now that Google has actually basically blocked my IP address. So I'm going to try and just basically use a temporary email address just to basically show you the process. Now obviously if you were doing this normally, you know, you would obviously use your existing email address. Obviously you'd put in your real name and address if you actually basically want to strike up a relationship with VMware. But if you basically just want to go off and grab the software like I'm doing now, sort of kind of anonymously, then, you know, feel free to put whatever you want in the address information. It's only they can send you stuff in the post, although I'm not quite sure that they do that anymore. Country, territory, United Kingdom. Preferred language, English. No, English. Now let's have a little look. 45 PA. I agree to that. I agree to that. I'm going to sign up. Yeah, okay, I'll save that. Okay, now I'm hoping that this disposable temporary email address, oh, there we go, it is actually basically working. So I can basically just click that link. I can activate my account, and it's going to ask me for my password again. So complete activation, incorrect password. Incorrect password. Okay, that's don't save. Okay, finger trouble. I must admit, do apologise. I switched to another desk in the office here, and I'm using a Dell keyboard, and this keyboard setup is very different to the heavy duty Cherry MX record that I'm using, so I don't know, I can't type. Okay, so we've registered successfully, we've logged in, and I'm just going to close some windows here so I don't get confused myself. Okay, so we want to go to trial and free products. This is a bit convoluted, this. I feel that this is a bit convoluted, this next step, because you basically got to go and select and say download free trial. Pauses with bated breath because it seems to have gone a bit slow again. But anyway, you select download free trial, and then it will actually basically show you the trial that you want to participate in. And then you have to click the register button again, and then you have to feed some information into it again. And again, you know, we've gone incredibly slow here. You know, we have fibre to the building, we have huge amounts of bandwidth, but clearly it doesn't seem to make any damn difference. So oddly, now that we've actually we've logged in once, we've clicked download, we want to download a trial, and we're obviously basically taken to a different part of the website, and now we've got to log in again. Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Anyway, so it's basically saying to me, yes, welcome, fine. Product Evaluation Center for VMware Update 7, VMware vSphere Update 7, Update 2. And now we have to click the register button to register for this. And then it's actually basically going to want us to basically put some more information back in. Mr. Industry, I don't know. Like obviously, you know, fill this in yourself as to how you want to be treated. Starts moaning about my telephone number again. Don't want sales to contact me. S5URT, I think, I believe that is. Agree to the license. And there's obviously something that job role architect. There's obviously something okay, right, okay, good. Typos, not clicking, whatever. Okay, so start free trial. This is where basically I struggled earlier on. For some strange reason, it wouldn't even give me the download for vSphere ESXi installable. And then when I did manage to basically get the ESXi ISO appear, the manual download button wouldn't work. So I'm hoping that this time when I click manual download, it downloads it. And you know, I don't believe this. You know, I'm beginning to wonder now whether or not that it's something to do with this computer, something to do with me broadband, something to do with VMware's website, but I clearly am at an absolute loss as to what on earth is going on here. This is just unbelievable. I'm just actually going to put this recording on hold a minute, because otherwise I'm going to sit here for another 20 minutes trying to work out what is, and I'm desperate really to get this recording done today. So just basically let me put this on pause. I'll be back in a minute. So 30 minutes later, we're back, and I've finally resolved the issue. And my apologies, I hold my hand up, VMware. Oh dear. It's not your website, it's our infrastructure. I'd completely forgotten that this particular laptop that I'm using here, its DNS servers are set up to use Pi-hole. Pi-hole is a small appliance which basically filters out adverts across your network. And it would seem that 8, 9 or 10 websites are being blocked when I click the manual download button. And it's probably doing that, just one moment, it's probably doing that because Pi-hole has enabled itself again, because I just disabled it before for 5 minutes. Yeah, okay, so you can see in real time there, using my iWatch to control my Pi-hole servers, which of course are all virtual and hosted on ESXi. I'm not actually using Raspberry Pis. Okay, so this is where we wanted to get to however many minutes ago, so I do apologise, and I do apologise to VMware. It's not your website, it's my crap here. Okay, so just one point whilst we're basically just going to click OK to save the file. I've seen many issues and many problems with people basically downloading ISOs from VMware mistakenly, trying to boot their servers to upgrade them or whatever. The clue is in the word installer. That is an installer. It's an installable version of ESXi. If it doesn't have the word installer, it's an update. You can't boot from it. You won't be able to install your server. Okay, so we're going to click save. I'm going to wait for that to download, and it shouldn't take very long. It's only about 300 meg. One of the things I do like to do is I like to use a product by Raymond Lind, which is an MD5 and SH1 checksum utility. Again, all these links are going to be in the steps. They're also in the article. What we're doing here is all based in the article if you want to read it in print rather than watch a video. So I'm going to basically browse to my desktop, to my download folder. That's the download I've just downloaded. And it's going to go off and do some number crunching and produce us an MD5 signature. If we compare that signature with the published signature on the listing here, we can actually basically see that we get a good match. A0856, A0856, and the last one was A846. Many time wasting can be avoided if you check the published MD5 signatures. The number of questions that I've answered because people have downloaded ISOs they've not installed properly because they're corrupt. Doesn't happen a lot these days. Because technology's got better. The ISO is quite small, it's 400 meg. Communications are faster, but doesn't really take a lot of time to basically make sure that the ISO that you've got is what we call pucker. Okay, now this is where things start getting a little bit convoluted. And I mentioned earlier that we're using a vendor server or a Dell partner server, Dell, and what we've just downloaded is the generic ESXi vanilla installer. But if you're using a vendor partner server, Dell EMC, IBM Lenovo, Fujitsu, HPE, they produce OEM, what they call custom images. A custom image contains additional drivers for their hardware that may not necessarily be included in the generic VMware image. Also, there are communication drivers that allow better communication with the hardware for health features that are included in the custom OEM images that are not in the generic images. So when you've got your nice new shiny server, don't get too excited and go off and download the generic ESXi image to install, because if you've got the wrong ISO, the only way to correct it is to do a reinstallation. So vendor server, partner server, stop, think. Let's just check to see whether or not that there actually is an OEM or custom image for it. Now things are a little bit convoluted here, and I'm just basically going to go Dell ESXi 7.02 download. If I download HOWTO, I could have basically put my tag number in, but I'm not going to bother doing that. Okay, so a bit odd because here it's being advertised as VMware ESXi 7.02 HOWTO, but it's hosted back at VMware. Same can apply to HPE, same can apply to Lenovo. VMware tends to host all the custom images, but just check. So if you're using a vendor server, if you're in a partner server, install the right version of ESXi, because we can't undo it afterwards. You're going to have to do a complete reinstallation. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to download now, and hopefully my Pi-hole is still disabled, and I'm going to click save. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use Raymond Lynn's MD5 checker. I'm just waiting for the download, and we're going to basically run that through just to check that we've got a good download. I'm pretty sure that we're not going to get any corruption, but just to show you the process. It's one of the little golden nuggets that I like to do. Okay, so we're basically going to browse for that image, which is this one here. It's the Dell one, and we're going to do the same thing. And okay, so EBCE, EBCE, D7C, D7C. Okay, good. We've got two good images, two good virtual images of a CD-ROM. So basically, I'm going to big X out of there. I'm going to big X out of there because it's done with that, and I'm going to big X out of there. No longer need to be on that page. No longer done with the HCL, and we'll drop back down the article. We're sort of kind of somewhere about here. So moving on to installing. Okay, well, I could do things the old-fashioned way, and I could basically, as I described there, you know, in my golden nugget, use Rufus to burn a USB flash drive, or burn it onto a CD-ROM if I happen to have any. But what I'm actually going to do in this video, I'm actually going to show you how to use out-of-band management, a function called iDRAC. In Dell, it's ILO, integrated lights out in HPE, and other server vendors have other technologies, IPMI, BMC, etc., which will actually allow you to manage your server remotely without actually basically being in a data center. So we're gonna have a go at doing that. So I'm already logged into my iDRAC here, which is a web interface, which has a dedicated management port on the back of the server, which is a 1 gig port, which is actually basically connected into the rest of the network infrastructure here at Saris HQ. And off the back of that, we have 10 gig that's all fed into that from the laptops and the desktops here. So I'm going to launch a virtual console preview. He says, and okay, there's one launched. Okay, green screen, no signal. Servers at the moment is not turned on. You'll probably hear it when I turned on, because it's about 26 degrees C today in this office. It's been a very warm spring, very dry, warm spring. Considering that we had a very wet winter and a wet beginning of the year, we've now almost turned into cold nights and very warm evenings. So it's getting a little bit toasty in here. Okay, so I digress. So I'm going to basically click the virtual media button. Now what this does, we've got our virtual image of the CD-ROM installer, the ESXi installer. So we're going to insert that virtual CD into a virtual CD-ROM drive on the server, and we're going to mount it. So I'm just going to click browse, and I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to go to my downloads, and that's the customized image we want, Dell EMC one. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to map the device. So we can see up here, virtual media is now connected, device is mapped 1, and that's our installation, so I can big X out of that. Okay, so virtual image in virtual CD-ROM drive in a physical host Poweredge R730. I'm going to go back to our power settings, and I'm just going to basically issue a power up sequence to our server, and I'm going to click apply. Yes, I want to execute this, please. And you'll hear a lot of noise as this server actually basically spins up. Just to note that I have previously updated the firmwares on this server. It's always worth remembering, if you change a major version or a minor version of ESXi, it's always worth doing a double check at the vendor server site if there's new firmware to basically put on. A lot of hardware issues can be avoided if you're actually basically using the right hardware. One of the other things that you will get asked, certainly by HPE, Dell and VMware, if you ever log a support call, they will often ask, are you actually basically running the latest version of the software? Just going to have to pause here and remember to press F11, the boot manager. This will allow me to actually basically select our virtual ISO mounted in our virtual CD-ROM drive, which is actually basically mapped via my workstation here back to the server. There is a function that Dell have, the lifecycle controller, which is a function that allows you to update firmware directly from the server, directly from the LAN via the internet, which basically saves an awful lot of downloading to USB flash drives, downloading to CD-ROM drives, booting the server. Does all the heavy lifting for you, and it's very good. I highly recommend that you actually have a look at the lifecycle controller, and maybe in the future we'll revisit this in another video, and we'll do a quick video on launching a lifecycle controller and doing some firmware updates. Okay, so I want to basically choose the one-shot BIOS boot menu, which will allow me basically to boot from my virtual, I told you there'd be bloopers and gaffs, virtual optical drive. Hang on, probably need more coffee. I'll get another one of those in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to select virtual optical drive, and very shortly we'll see the server boot from the ESXi ISO. And I've only done this video about 12 times, and it was only about on the 11th that I actually basically noticed that there's a spelling mistake in the installer that Dell have issued. See if you can spot it. The observant of you may do. One thing that I would actually basically stress is, now if we just left the installer, it would automatically boot, but I'm just going to pause it there so I can just waffle on. One thing that you will notice if you do installations in this manner via a virtual CD-ROM drive, via out-of-band management, ILO, iDRAC, it's slow. Personally, I think it's painfully slow. If you're in a rush and you're actually physically got hands on to the server in the data center, in the office, then burn the ISO to a CD-ROM drive or build a flash drive using Rufus, all documented in the article. I'll put the links in the article, put the links in the steps as well. Because doing it this way remotely is slow, and it just seems to be the mechanism in whatever way that the data is being sent over the connection. The bottleneck, I don't believe, is the LAN. As I said, you know, it's 1 gig connected into a bunch of 10 gig switches, and these workstations are 10 gig. Anyway, so I digress. Did you actually basically spot the error? Okay, so I'm going to select the installer, and it's going to start to boot. And this is where, if you've done an ESXi installation before, you will see that this is slow. What I might do to reduce the time of loading, I might decide basically to speed this up if I can, because it is slow. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to let this record, but I'm just going to turn off my cam, and I'm just going to turn off my mic. Okay, so I'm back, and we're waiting basically for the installer to show us the welcome screen. As you can see, this server is using a 2690 processors. These will be removed in the next versions of ESX 7.5 or 8.0, rendering this server no longer certified for use with an ESXi product. 128 gig of memory. It's rather small today, to be honest with you. We wouldn't deploy servers, to be honest with you, into any business. Probably not without 256 or even 384 gig of memory today. The requirements for ESXi and the requirements for vCenter Server. vCenter Server's minimum requirements is now 12 to 16 gig just for the appliance. So 128 gig of memory really is not going to get you very far, to be honest with you, in today's world. Just as an aside, as you were watching there, all those modules, what we call VIBs, effectively a VIB is a VMware word basically for a driver. All those drivers basically are being read and loaded up, and then they go memory resident. And it's the same basically with booting an ESXi installation. The installation media is only read on boot. Very little read and writes occur to the installation source after the server is booted. You can even remove USB flash drives or SD cards from servers once it's booted. I wouldn't recommend it, it's obviously not supported. but I did a video a number of years back to prove the point that you can actually basically remove the media once the server's booted. You'll find you get an error message in the summary, basically reaching out and telling you that it's lost access to the installation source. And things like VMware tools, obviously, which are in a VMFS partition on the installer source, is where the VMware tools are read from, and log locations as well. But as an aside, we just noticed this because some organisations installed onto USB flash drives and left them hanging out at the back of the servers, and I don't know, people basically wandered into the data centers and saw shiny objects out the back of servers, and like magpies thought, oh, I'll have them, and only when the servers were restarted, obviously the servers actually basically failed to boot because the installation media had vanished. But it just goes to prove that you can remove the media, and the server will still carry on booting, still carry on operating. Okay, in this server we're not going to install ESXi onto USB flash drive. We're not going to install onto local disk. We generally don't actually purchase many servers these days with local disk, and we certainly don't do any installations on local disk, flash or spinning rust. We generally leave the spinning rust and flash for vSAN. This particular server does have all flash, does have all spinning rust, but we're going to use those as data stores. This server does have mirrored SD cards. I think I hear it a lot. People basically are very concerned about installing onto USB flash drives or SD cards, thinking that they're going to fail. Well, if you've got mirrored SD cards, then you've got redundancy at the SD card level. Anyway, okay, so following my article, I'm going to basically hit enter to continue. As you can see, and as you have noticed by the boot up sequence, it is slow. F11 to accept and continue, this is sort of kind of like 300 baud modem access, if you're old enough to remember what a 300 baud modem ran like in connecting to bulletin board systems. Okay, so here you can actually basically see two RAID arrays that have already been created on the internal RAID card, but you can also see I am actually hitting keys on the keyboard here. The delay is sub 2 seconds. Okay, so there's our internal dual SD. So that's the installation source that I'm going to choose, and I'm going to hit enter. And it will go off basically and gather some information about the selected drive, and it will find an existing installation of ESX on here. Now, if we were doing an in-place upgrade, then we would just basically continue and select upgrade. But I'm not actually here to do an upgrade today. I'm here to do a complete reinstallation. So effectively a trash it and throw it away and reformat. So I'm going to select install, and I'm going to hit enter. As you can see, none of this is rocket science. Okay, now I'm going to basically select my language, my keyboard layout. Now, word of caution, we have seen some very funny stuff happening here. People swear blind they have entered their password correctly, and when they actually basically get to the point of booting up their server and trying to log in for the first time, it says password not recognized. And there is no supported method within ESXi ever of resetting a password. The supported method is to do a reinstallation of the software. So check you've not got caps lock on, scroll lock on, num lock, caps lock, shift lock, whatever locks that you've got on. Just check that you've not got them on. It's very, very easily done. I've done it myself, and I'm at a different keyboard today, and I'm just actually checking now that I'm not a numpty, and I've actually basically got caps lock on. So basically, select your keyboard layout and hit enter, and then basically create your one time. See, I've done it now. It doesn't help that I'm typing faster than what the information is actually basically going into the keyboard buffer on the iDRAC. So I'm just going to try that again and hope that I got it right. No, I didn't. Hang on. Passwords match. Okay, great. Okay, as I said, check, double check that you've got the password right and you've not got cap locks. The same with characters. You know, if you're using pound signs, hash signs, asterisks, ampersands, at signs, sometimes the keyboard layout and ESXi installer interprets it incorrectly. So I'm basically going to hit enter continue. Okay, so you know, it's the system has encountered the following warning. So even in 702, VMware has decided that future CPU may not be supported in a future ESXi release. Please plan accordingly. Doesn't mean to say it's not going to work. Just means to say that it may not be supported in a future ESXi release. So we'll basically just, yeah, we're aware of that warning, and we'll basically just hit enter to continue. Okay, so we're now ready to install ESXi 702, 7.0.2, 7.0 U2 onto our server. So I'm going to hit F11 to install. And whilst that's doing that, I basically just popped downstairs whilst ESXi was booting up, and I'm just going to pour myself a cold Erdinger. This is that's a good head, isn't it? Rubbish. This is actually alcohol-free, refreshing isotonic drink, so non-alcoholic. Because I need to wet me whistle a bit because it's a bit warm here today, and I've been talking a lot all morning to myself. Doing these installations, so I can get this video out to you, so you can actually start having a look at 702. Again, it's slow. Reading, writing, virtually across the network or whatever it's doing. So let me just touch on the vExpert program that VMware offers, and if you're currently helping out the VMware community by writing blogs, articles, helping out on Reddit, helping out on the VMware forums, helping out on Experts Exchange, if you are helping out other VMware users in the VMware community and you want to join the vExpert program, then reach out to me as a vExpert Pro, and we can talk and we can mentor you as to how about putting in your application. The second round of applications for 2021 are coming up shortly. So if this is something that you think that you want to do, you're already doing it, or you're not doing it, and you want to know how to do it, how to go about it, then reach out to me. The vExpert community is a great bunch of people. There's about 4,000 of us around the world now, involved in all sorts of aspects. Advantages to you, you get listed in the vExpert directory. It certainly can probably aid your career. We get not for resale licenses to use for 365 days of the year of all VMware products. We get invited to behind the scenes webinars and beta releases of the products, and we get blogger passes for VMware World. We get invitations to the vExpert parties at VMware World. So these are just some of the benefits of joining the vExpert program, and I've been a member of it now for 11 years. It's not a technical certification. It gives you the ability to liaise with like-minded VMware nerds, geeks. Am I allowed to use those words? and give back to the V community, which you may already be doing. And you know, there are some people that I've helped mentor and come on to the vExpert program that have sort of kind of turned around and said to me that, you know, they never ever thought that in a million years that, you know, they'd be able to basically become a vExpert. So, you know, reach out to me, Einstein a Go-Go on Twitter. You can find me at Experts Exchange. You can find my my website. Contact me through that. I say, if you're interested basically in being a vExpert, then, you know, reach out to me today, and I'll only be too glad to help you out on your journey. You know, oh, you also get a nice shiny certificate as well that you can print out and put on your wall. So think about it. 53%. Just excuse me. I should have really put that in the fridge. It's a bit lukewarm, which is not particularly nice. I got some snacks as well whilst I was downstairs. So I've got a pack of cheese and onion hula hoops. But just excuse me. I can't remember if I mentioned that VMware have actually removed the 7.0.2 patch update from their site, because they found that if you were using the ESXi interface to download and apply the update to an existing ESXi 7.0, 7.01 server on reboot, it basically failed with a crypto UEFI error. So they have removed that update whilst they fix it in the time being. So the only way actually to upgrade an existing server at the moment, 7.0 or 7.01, is basically by using the good old ISO method. And you probably noticed at the beginning of this process, we had the option there basically to an upgrade rather than install. You would do an upgrade to upgrade your current product. Don't do an install over a working production server, because there is a high probability that you could erase the data store that your virtual machines are located on, if it's a local data store. So just as an aside, you know, I'm just going to turn off cam and mic whilst this completes. Okay, so eventually we get there. So installation complete, and that's what we're hoping to see. ESXi 7.0.2 has been installed successfully. Hit enter to reboot. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to hit enter to reboot. Server will shut down and reboot. The process will take a short time to complete. I'm going to go to my virtual media, which is currently disconnected anyway, just to check, and we're just going to sit back and watch the server restart and basically boot up to the first DC UI screen. This should actually basically be a little bit quicker, because this is actually now reading and booting from the internal SD cards, which are dual and mirrored. So I'm not going to touch any keys here. We're just going to watch the server boot, which if any of you have actually basically done an installation of ESX before and booted it, and it's exactly the same. It's not really any different. Build number will be different. The sign-on will be different. But that basically is about it. And again, you actually basically can do very little management of the host server on the host. You've got access to a console, command line interface, a bash shell. It's not technically bash, but if you're familiar with Unix, Linux, FreeBSD, that's the sort of kind of shell environment that you've got. But you haven't really got any ability to connect to the GUIs of the workstations or the servers that are installed, and you certainly can't install any virtual machines from the ESXi CLI. Somebody's going to prove me wrong there, I know they are. But generally, you would only access the bash shell or the shell for troubleshooting. The majority of the work that you're going to do is by basically using an administration workstation. Now I used this term before, and I think somebody got confused and they asked me what was an administration workstation, and maybe it's me. I call an administration workstation is any computer that I do admin from. That could be Windows, that could be Linux, that could be a Mac. One of the benefits now with the later versions of VMware vSphere is that we have the ability to manage them via a browser. And I know some of us old timers still like and prefer the old vSphere thick client, but I'm afraid that's gone. And so is Flex. So now basically we have to use a HTML5 compatible browser to do our management, and that's what we'll be looking at in part 2 as to how we connect to our ESXi 702 server, and how we actually start doing some management, how we actually start creating data stores, how we actually start uploading ISOs, how we basically create virtual machines, Windows, Linux, how we do networking, how we do VMware ESXi updates. All that's to come in the next parts of these videos, which hopefully I can maybe do one a week, and you can follow this journey as we move through all these windows, just parts. Just as an aside, if you're actually basically using shared storage like iSCSI LUNs, fiber channel LUNs, or NFX exports as data stores, you can find that your ESX server can boot slightly slower as it reaches out and communicates with all those LUNs. So don't be too concerned, but just bear that in mind and factor that in mind if you're deciding to reboot a server in the middle of the day in production hours and you've got all those LUNs on board. It can take 5, 10, maybe 20 minutes longer. Okay, so there we are. There's our server. I've actually already have static IP addresses reserved for the MAC address of this particular server, so I knew it was going to basically pick up an IP address of 192.168.182.117. I also knew basically that it was going to pick up its domain host name, ESXi 007. But just for completeness and following the original article, which I'm just actually basically going to refer back to, how to install and configure, and we've done all that, and we're at the bottom there, and we've loaded up, and we're at that bit there. So I'm going to basically press, I'm going to go back to my virtual console, and I'm going to press F2 just to see that I did actually get the password right. The default username is root, and I'm going to type in that magical complex password. So I did get it right. So this is where you configure your management network, and you can select your IP configuration. And as you can currently see, it's actually basically telling me that it's using dynamic IP address. But what I'm going to do, just following that article, is I'm just going to set that to a static now. And I'm going to basically check my DNS configuration. And I'm actually going to say use the following servers, and that's my host name. And I'm going to use a custom DNS suffix as well, sorrow-consultants.co.uk. Then we're going to press escape, and then we're going to say yes to restart network changes, and that's then basically going to save them. And I'm going to do one final thing that I didn't do in the article, and I'm going to touch on this again, but I'm going to preach this now. We can test our network management here. Now, I actually basically think that one of the DNS servers there is currently off. I think that's 181, so I'm not going to get a response from that one, but 136.242 is up. So basically I'm just going to hit enter and we'll see what happens. Okay, default gateways responding. As I said, 182.181 DNS server is currently off. So we're probably going to get a fail there. That's up, and hopefully it'll resolve its host name correctly. Okay. The reason I just wanted to show you that is VMware vSphere infrastructure is only as good as your networking. And when I say networking, I mean your domain name system. Don't use IP addresses. Get into the habit of using fully qualified domain names, and get into the habit of, for every host device that you're going to use in your infrastructure, create an A record against this IP address so that you can refer to it by its fully qualified domain name. Many VMware vSphere installation fails because people are not using fully qualified domain names. It's DNS. I would even go to say, before you even go anywhere near the hardware compatibility list, anywhere near the Dell website to purchase your server, open up Excel or a notebook if you've got one. Write down your host names, write down your domain name against IP addresses, and register them all in advance with your DNS. And then when you get to do your installation, you're not going to fall into any problems and pitfalls with DNS. And I just wanted to show there that host name, ESXi007.cyrus-consultants.co.uk, can be resolved using effectively a reverse name lookup. Basically resolving, sorry, it's not a reverse name lookup, that is basically resolving ESXi007 correctly. And I say currently at the moment 182.181, that DNS server is off, and we'll talk about this later when we get into deploying vCenter server, which is very important that we're using fully qualified domain names. So there we have it. Is it 30 to 60 minutes? Looking at my timer here, it suggests it's an awful lot longer than that. We'll have to look. But anyway, 30 to 60 minutes. I hope you've enjoyed today's hour. in looking at how we actually basically install VMware ESXi 7.0.2 or 7U2 on a Dell Poweredge R730 via iDRAC. It's been a great pleasure. We've had some gaffes along the way, but I'm afraid, you know, welcome to my world. So anyway, so I'm going to say at this time, you know, be safe, and I'll catch up with you again. And in the meantime, you know, please feedback, thumbs up. I'll put all the links down in the steps. And if you want to see more of these videos, if you want to see lifecycle controller, if you want to see Pi-hole that's not specifically VMware, then, you know, let me know, and we'll do them. You know, we'll do some record requests. So anyway, I'm thirsty. My throat is dry. I've finally got to the end point of where I wanted to be, which was basically showing you how we actually install ESXi 7.0.2 via iDRAC on a Dell Poweredge R730. So anyway, all the best, and be safe, and I'll catch up with you again.